Our interview this morning is with Fred John Coyle Jr. Fred was born in Pawtucket, Rhode Island in October of 1934. He served in the United States Army from 1958 until 1967. His highest rank attained was First Lieutenant, '02. This interview is conducted at Burleson, Texas on Friday, January the 4th, 2013. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Mr. Coyle in any way. Also in the room we have Milton Gibson and Gary Burton, who are our videographers. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and also for Operation Remember, City of Burleson, Texas. And with that little intro, Fred, you can tell us about your time in the Army, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Milton. And thank you, Gary. I'll start out with my dad. I'm very, very proud of him. He was a high-ranking officer in the Navy. And one of the situations he's remembered for is he was on the aircraft carrier that picked up George Bush Sr. when he had to bail out in 1943 in the Pacific. President Bush had spent 13 hours in the water until our ship was till my dad's ship was called to go to that spot and save him. And so we have a lot of history with that in our family, and my dad was a staunch military person and prompted me to get into the military as soon as I could while I was in college. I joined the National Guard. My military career is not really as exciting as my dad because I never saw any active duty. But I was just before the war, just before Vietnam, but I did get an awful lot out of my experience that I had in the military. First of all, I joined the National Guard in 1958 while I was in college, and after I graduated from college, I got into my reserve unit and got as far as PFC 3, and then I decided I wanted to do something with myself and progress. So I applied to go to OCS school, and I passed all the physicals and the qualification tests and was sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma in the artillery. And after 21 weeks of training, I did finally get my second lieutenant commission at OCS school. One thing I'm proud of is that we started with a class of 248 candidates, and only 58 of us graduated. So many of them faded away as the training went on. It was a very aggressive training, and outside of my basic training that I had initially at Fort Dix, New Jersey, this was quite an experience for me. After that, I had to pay my reserve duties, and I went back to my unit, and I had to go to summer camps every summer, and of course I had to go to monthly meetings, which is required, or was required at that time when you're in the reserves. I spent time at Fort Drum in the summer, Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, and I have kind of an interesting story about Fort Chaffee. When I was a PFC, this is before I got my commission. We were out bivouacking, and we had these sleeping bags, of course, we had to sleep in on the ground. And I had a little tent mate that was from the hills of Kentucky. One evening, it was inside that sleeping bag, it had to be 130 degrees because it was easy 100 outside. Very, very warm in the month of July in Fort Chaffee. Well, a little copperhead snake slipped down the side of my body in the tent, woke me up, of course. In the sleeping bag, and I woke my mate up, and I said, what do I do now? I have a copperhead, or I have a snake in the bag with me. We didn't know what kind of a snake it was. And this young man guided me very carefully in what to do. He had been used to snakes in the hills of Kentucky, and he told me to move as slowly as I could out of the sleeping bag. It seems that the history of copperheads is they are attracted to body heat, and they do attack when they're excited and when they're involved in body heat. They do see, the history is that they do attack. Fortunately, this one didn't. And it seemed like it took me days to get out of that sleeping bag because I was so sweaty. But anyway, I made it out, and for the rest of the bivouacking, they let me sleep in the back of a truck instead of on the ground. But anyway, that's a story I'll never forget. That happened at Fort Chaffee. One of the big things I learned as a young lieutenant in attaining that position was the discipline. And I'll never forget the discipline it taught me, and I carried it through life. Most of my life, I carried that good, strong discipline through. After I completed my reserve commitment, I joined a company, and that was in 1966. I joined a company by the name of International Silver. Excuse me, I backtracked there a little bit. I did have a couple of more years left in my reserve obligations, but I did join a company in Meriden, Connecticut called International Silver, and they sent me to St. Louis starting out as a young salesman. I did have to go to meetings and also summer camps while I was with them, monthly meetings, and I had 2 years left. And from St. Louis, I went down to Austin, Texas, and got transferred down there as a young salesman. And I went to meetings down there. The beauty of the whole thing is that you could go around the country and always attend a meeting and fulfill your obligation that way. So the National Guard had units just about in every city or large town. Actually, I was very fortunate not to be called because as I was winding down my commitment in the reserves, Vietnam was kind of getting started, and my dad kind of guided me to kind of get out. And once I fulfill my obligation and not extend it. So this is what I did. And I found out that many men in my battalion had to go and were called, and many didn't come back. So I was really blessed to get that guidance from my dad. My future contacts in the military have been ongoing, and I'm kind of proud of those. I've tried to continue a strong relationship with the veterans as I'm going forward. And the neat thing is, everywhere I've been transferred to or moved to, I've come in contact with the Veteran Association. One of the experiences I've had, I was a commander of the American Legion group down in Austin, Texas, and at Onion Creek, and I was very active in that for 6 years. After that, I moved to the Fort Worth area, and I thought about contributing some way when I got up to Fort Worth, and how was I going to do it? But my God guided me into doing something with my dog. And I had a very attached pet that I had called Baby. And Baby and I have been together now for about 6 or 7 years up here in the Fort Worth area. And we've made some commitments to help the military and the veterans throughout our working together. as a therapist group. And we try to volunteer as much as we can and do some things that we can do to help veterans out and also stay attached to the military. One of the things recently that we did together is we volunteer each year. My wife also, we volunteer at the Armed Forces Bowl, which just was completed here in Fort Worth at TCU Stadium. And if anybody hasn't really got into that or gone to that event, it's a tremendous military event, which takes place right up the street here in Fort Worth at TCU once a year. And the bowl game this year was Air Force versus Rice. And all the military groups are there. And one of the biggest thrills in the ball game that we had this year is we saw a paraplegic skydive from many thousands of feet up and land right in the stadium. Along with other military personnel, we had about 8 that skydived out, and the paraplegic was the last one to land. Amazing thing was they all seemed to land on the 50-yard line, which boggles my mind. What we did is my dog and I and my wife, we handed out little flags to people as we saw them during the game. And also we were involved in the transportation department. And this is our 3rd year partaking in the Armed Forces Bowl. It's quite an experience. The other thing that we do together is we visit nursing homes. And one of the, we call it pet therapy. And it is pet therapy. And in the nursing homes that we visit, we always look for the veterans that are roaming the halls in their wheelchairs. And we always meet them. And I'd say 80 to 90% of them have partaken in the military. So we share stories and give them the opportunity to pet the dog and talk a little military. And we do the same thing in Alzheimer's homes that we visit too, especially one over in Mansfield called Avalon. And most of those folks are not quite as sharp as the nursing home individuals, but we make the visits there, and we get an awful lot out of that because we do get their attention when we talk military, and also the dog gets their attention too. Recently we partook in the Veterans Park here in Burleson, Texas, and we've been to 2 events there. The first event was when they planted the trees, and over 100 trees. We were very proud of that together. And the other event was when they laid the capsule into the ground with all the history of Burleson that's not to be open until 2112. Another event that we attend together, connecting ourselves to veterans, is private homes, where we're called. We actually volunteer through a hospice organization here in Burleson called Accolade. And Accolade sends us to see patients of theirs. And when we are assigned to that, we certainly look to see if they're a veteran. And even if they're not, we make the call. The Veterans Hospital in Dallas, that was a visit we made. And that was an excellent visit because we tried to get to all the floors. And we talked to lots of veterans that were wounded or had some kind of a mental problem or some kind of a problem, and that was a worthwhile visit, and my dog was allowed to make the visit with me, which I really appreciated. So that was a good experience, and my next goal is to visit the Fort Worth Veterans Hospital, which we have not done yet. Let me see what else. Those are some of the things that we do together to contact veterans. And we go to the parades, of course, and we walk in the parades and together. And my dog Baby wears a special tag and a special flag, and we definitely wear the flag on all our visits. I wear my lapel pins and my hats that I have, flag hats, and the dog wears the bandana and also has a special dog tag that she wears, which I acquired in my hunt for things to do with the military when we make our visits. Recently, I picked up a gentleman that's 86 years old, and he's ex-marshal at the golf course. His name is Wayne McCarty, and I've been bringing him out on my visits to Alzheimer homes, nursing homes, and he also has a dog, and he also has fought in World War II and has quite a little history there. And he was a Navy man. And so the four of us go out on trips now, and it gets him out of the house. It gets him attached to volunteer work, keeps him busy, keeps him active, and he looks forward to our visits that we make. So he's part of the hospice organization also as a volunteer. And that's a neat thing because he has some different types of stories, military stories that I don't have. He was definitely active duty and in World War II. We also pass out little flags and little pin flags to our patients when we visit them in the Alzheimer homes and also in the nursing homes. We're trying to do different things now as much as we can, attaining to the military. And any assignments I get here from my hometown, Burleson, I'll be sure to jump on those and try to help out. I'm very proud of my military career and my experiences. Back in 1985, I had an experience to caddy for Arnold Palmer for 9 months. And this was at Onion Creek. And I remember one day I was talking to Arnie about the military, and he said, tomorrow let's wear our military hats. And he just happened to have two beautiful hats with the American flag on them. So those are the hats we wore the next day, and I was real proud of that. And we talked military to the kids and to all the fans in the gallery that we talked to that day about the military. Arnie didn't spend a lot of time in the military, but he was in the reserves for 3 years. And that's one of my highlights in my life is to have that experience, to be with him for 9 months on the senior tour and be able to carry his bag and get that opportunity. My military family is my son, who is a Marine, and my dad's deceased, Navy man, and that's about it. I don't have any more family in the military at this point, but I'm very proud of my experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. We've done in excess of 100 of these interviews, and I think you're the first person who has spent so much time with veterans after active service. Things you're doing, to me, are just great, Fred. It's just really to be commended, and we appreciate what you do there.
Thank you.
But that's my 2 cents. Now, if we go back.
Thank you.
Grew up in New England, Rhode Island, and your dad was Navy, so was he gone a lot of the time?
My dad was gone quite a bit. My dad was especially when he was in World War II. He was gone for, I remember one stint, he was gone for 2 years and we didn't see him. And then he came back and had leave, and then he had to go back, and he was in the Pacific that time. Most of the time he was in the Pacific. So we didn't see a lot of my dad at that time. He was also in business. When he got back into the business world, he was traveling most of the time. He traveled throughout the world in the business that he did.
Your brothers and sisters?
I just have 2 sisters.
2 sisters.
Yes.
So when Dad was gone, Mom kind of kept everybody shipshape, so to speak.
That's right. And another experience that I remember about my dad is that, and he told me these things as he got older and older in life. He's what you call a quiet man that didn't really communicate a lot and kept a lot of things within. But he did tell me one time that when he was stationed in Virginia as a commissioned officer, Patty Page volunteered in World War II and helped him out in the office for about 6 months. And she just was deceased the other day, and we all think about Patty as one of the great singers.
Very good. You were 24 before you enlisted?
Yes, I was about 23 when I enlisted.
Were you degreed, or you were still going to college?
No, I was still going to college. I had about a year and a half left, and I did join the National Guard, and at that time, because I knew I was going to enlist in the military. Those were during the years when we have draft, and my dad said, get in as soon as you can and enlist, and then you can progress forward in what you want to do in the military.
You went down to Fort Dix for basic?
Went down to Fort Dix for basic. That was my first experience on what discipline was all about.
And that's where I was going with that. Of course, you were born in 34, so you grew up in a more disciplined society atmosphere than we have today, certainly.
Exactly. No cell phones, no computers. And the only time we knew when to come home after playing all day was when the street lights went on. That was our signal.
When you went down to Dix, I guess they rolled you out at 5 a.m. or some such time?
That's right.
Was that a shock, or in your house with military background, et cetera, you just kind of adapt to that?
I adapted to that pretty quickly because I had to, I was throwing newspapers when I was 10 years old and caddying when I was 11, and I always had to work. And so work and following through and that kind of thing was a natural in our family. So I was ready for a little military assignment.
How long did you spend at Dix?
I think the basic there was somewhere like a month and a half.
6 weeks?
6 weeks, yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Take you out on the rifle range?
Oh yeah, we did all that, the rifle and bivouacking and marching and discipline
Learned
and
your
cleaning
lesson from your
toilets and working in the kitchen in the 3 o'clock in the morning and preparing food and we, scrubbing latrines and everything else. We went through the whole gamut.
You remember any of the people you went through basic with, Fred?
Oh,
Or maybe drill instructors or any?
I remember the faces, but not the names.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of them are deceased, and probably a lot of them doing just the thing I'm doing today. I hope they are anyway.
At some point in time, you went to Fort Sill. Where am I here? Went to Fort Sill for OCS and artillery training. Were they concurrent, or did you go to OCS school, get the gold bar, and then go over to the artillery school?
No, it was an artillery OCS school, so the artillery was phased into the basic training that we had to go through. It was a very, very tough type of training, tougher than the basic that I had to go through when I went to Fort Dix. But artillery classes were tied into it, just like going back to school. And the rest of it was harassment and discipline and all that as we went along.
Harassment. You would have been there in 59, 60, somewhere?
Yeah, 1960 to 61. It was
What sort of equipment, guns did you?
We had the 105 howitzers and in the bigger ones, and we had our rifles, and we had a full training, live training, and we were out in the hills much of the time, you know, and it was a very realistic type training that we went through there.
Again, a different time, but in the firing of those howitzers, I guess you call it a howitzer, there's some geometry or trig involved in that?
There's quite a bit of math involved. That's right, Dale. There's quite a bit of math involved, and we had to think very quickly because we were firing the 105s and the 155s, and today they're probably extinct. But we had to do a lot of figuring, and before we pull the trigger, and those are the things that we learned in the classes that we went to, and those were the quiet times during the day when we had the experience to go into a classroom and learn from books. And so, yeah, there was a lot of basic math and algebra involved.
On a basic, say a 105 crew, how many guys?
There's six
6.
on a 105 crew. Yeah.
Were you a gun captain, gun commander? Were you in charge of those 6 guys?
Well,
You would have been in charge of more than that, I guess, wouldn't you, Fred?
yeah, it's back then I was not a commissioned officer yet. I didn't get my commission until I completed the whole 22 weeks of OCS school.
Okay.
But we were certainly given our turn to lead the group on all the field trips, and everybody had a turn at it that was left in our classes. And we got down to, as I say, 58 graduated, and we started with over 200. So
And that was, those numbers were pretty tough to my way of thinking. 248 went in, 58 came out with a gold bar, and the rest got to be an E2 and go off to Vietnam or somewhere, I guess?
yeah, the rest, a lot of them just quit and walked off. And then there are others that just didn't make it and didn't graduate and had to go back to their units to go through more courses and more training to get their commission.
I was Navy OCS, and we called those guys rollbacks. They had a second shot. They rolled back 8 weeks
Yep.
and had a second shot. And if they didn't make it, they went to the fleet. So,
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the Navy OCS is in my state. It's in Newport, Rhode Island. At least.
I spent some time there, sir.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Your little snake story. I'm sure that over 40 or 50 years, this snake has grown in size, Fred. How big was the snake really?
Well, copperheads are not that big. The copperhead, I would say, would be the one that got into my bag was about 3 feet, 3 to 4 feet. The way we killed that copperhead was we rolled up the sleeping bag and got our shovels and just banged away for about 10 minutes. And it was everything was smashed to pieces when we opened it up. But it was a copperhead, and we didn't know what it was when it got in there.
You're stretched out in this bag, and you wake up with this weird sensation. Where was this snake when you first realized he was in the bag with you?
It was on my leg. And my leg were the ones that were down closest to the opening, my feet. And he was coming up the side of my leg is where he was.
Oh.
And there's more body heat in the bag. As he came into the bag, he was attracted to the body heat. So he had found something he liked.
Wow.
He got up as far as my chest, and that's when I started making my move.
Very carefully.
Very carefully. In other words, no panic.
Went to work for International Silver and as an outside salesperson, I guess.
Yes.
What were you selling? Who did you sell it to, Fred?
Our products were knives, forks, and spoons, silver trays, punch bowls, and candelabra. Anything that was silver back in those days was a hot item and we were the world's biggest silverware company. And then we got into pewter, and then we got into stainless. And so we had many products, even silver polish. So I started out by calling on small mom and pop jewelry stores. And most of those guys are extinct today because the big guys have put them out of business.
International Silver was a made in USA product?
Made in U.S., that's right.
Is that still true with silverware today, Fred?
Silverware today is mostly made in the Orient. Actually, the people that put our company out of business years later was Japan. They started competing against us. And Japan was the big competitor back then. They were the first ones making TVs and that kind of thing. And today it's China and Taiwan and Korea.
Okay. Going on to what you're doing these days, had you ever had a dog? Did you have a dog growing up as a kid?
Never had a dog growing up, always wanted one. And I had 4 schnauzers in my life after I got into the silverware business and got married. And had to bury all 4 of them throughout the years. And then I finally got a Welsh Corgi, and that's the one I have today. And they're a herding dog, and as you might recall, the Queen of England has 6 of them. They were very hard to find, and you don't see them advertised in the paper at all. But it's probably the best dog I've ever had. But to answer your question, Dale, I did not grow up with a dog.
But Baby is the current, she's the corgi that you have today. The
Baby,
little dog you had out of the
that's right.
park.
That's the one that we got, that does the therapy with me. We had to go through tests to be able to volunteer in the homes that we go into.
Who does that testing?
The hospice organization that we joined called Avalon here in Burleson. Accolade, excuse me, not Avalon. Avalon is the Alzheimer home that we visit over in Mansfield. We had to do a little training, and she had to learn. She was a dog that doesn't bark. So that was a real plus. And working for the government, you know, hospice is a government organization, so we had to do had to take a TB test and have to do that yearly in order to volunteer and things like that. But she's very well qualified, and she knows exactly what to do in these homes that we visit.
I know what it was. You caddied on the senior tour with Arnold?
Yes, I did. And the way that happened was...
This was not just one tournament at Onion Creek.
No.
You traveled the senior tour with Arnie for...
We did 11 tournaments together. And the way that thing happened was I was working for a jewelry company at that time called Balfour Art Carved, which manufactured high school and college rings, Super Bowl rings. And I was club champion at my golf club, and the club champion got an opportunity that year because we had a senior tournament at our golf course called the Legends of Golf. It was actually the first money senior tournament in 1974 is when they first started making money on in the golf business. You know, there was the PGA Tour, but not the seniors didn't get a thing. So the seniors started at Onion Creek, and it was called the Legends of Golf. In 1980 is when I arrived there, 1979. And 1985 is when Arnie showed up there with Dow Finsterwall. Dow Finsterwall is his partner. Well, I was given the opportunity to caddy for Arnie during his practice rounds at Onion Creek. He came a couple of days early, and then I caddied for him in the Pro-Am. We got along very well together. We talked. He went to Wake Forest, and I was at North Carolina, and I remember watching him when I was a freshman at North Carolina, where I went to college, and he was a senior at Wake Forest. So we had a lot in common there. He asked me at the end of the Pro-Am day if I would be available to carry his bag for about 9 months because his caddy was going back to Europe and asked for a sabbatical, had family situation, and wanted some time off. As a matter of fact, his caddy was his pilot in his jet. So I got permission from my company, and of course they granted me that permission to take a year off and do my deal with Ani, and that's how it all started.
You didn't get to fly the jet?
No, I didn't. No, we did commercial. Yeah, we went commercial. Even though he was still qualified to fly, he just felt that at the age he was at that time, and he was 55, that he better let it rest until his caddy got back.
Kind of wind things up. Your son is a Marine, was in the active Marine Corps. Is he still in, or has he completed his obligation?
My son graduated from high school in Austin, didn't know what he wanted to do, was kind of a hyper little guy, and had no interest in where he colleges, and so just unsettled. So he applied to the Marine Corps. And they had a program then, if you got through basic and went through 8 years in reserves, they would pay your way through college. So my son went in and got sent to Fort Pendleton out in San Diego and got through, and I was real proud of him because that is a tough training. And from there he went to Southwest Texas State College down in San Marcos and got a full scholarship and completed his reserve operation, his reserves about 6 years after that. Okay. He is not active today.
Okay. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to come visit with us, Fred, and certainly commend your time in the military and then really what you're doing today. It's just, you're doing a great service, really. I get one question while I think about it. You call on VA hospitals, you visit VA hospitals. What sort of comments do you get from those vets as to their relationship with the VA?
They're so proud of their military background, the ones that we visited. We've only been to one VA hospital, and that's the one on Lancaster in Dallas. That was quite an experience for us. That was completely different than the other kinds of homes that we visit. These guys took us right in, wanted to talk to us. Some of them had a hard time talking, but the dog, my dog Baby, just jumps right up on the bed and licks them, and they love that. And that's what he does with all the patients that he comes in contact with. The first thing he'll do is start licking. And if they do some petting, he'll do more licking. And they're so proud of the opportunity they got to get taken care of the way they're taken care of. They're all a happy group. I found them mostly happy and content, and it was quite an experience, and I can't wait to get to the one in Fort Worth. Looking forward to that.
My reason for asking, certainly, we have some contact with veterans and Veterans Affairs. Most of the comments I hear are the same feeling, the same comments that you get. People are relatively pleased with what they get from the VA. On the other hand, you do hear a few people who are very vocal on can't get an appointment, can't get the proper service, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I solicited your comment, Fred. I just wanted to know firsthand. So anyway, sir, we certainly appreciate you coming and think we had a good interview.
I appreciate the opportunity, Dale, and it's been very, very fruitful to me.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.